Colin's sonny Larry. Didn't you and he used to be the best of friends?
We're still the best of friends.
No, you're not.
Who says we're not?
Sit somewhere else.
But I have my pint there, Colin.
He has his pint there, Colin. Okay, I'll sit somewhere else.
So,
Are you rowing?
I didn't think we were rowing.
Well, you are rowing.
It does look like we're rowing. The Banshees of Inisherin. It's a story of an island and the people on that island, and two friends who are no longer friends and how those consequences reach out into the community. If I've done something to you, just tell me what I've done to you.
But you didn't do anything to me. I just don't like you no more.
You liked me yesterday.
There's no particular reason given initially for this breakup, and it becomes a tale of destruction. If you don't stop bothering me, I have a set of shears at home, and I'll take one of my fingers off with them. Each day you bother me more, another I'll take off, until I have no fingers left.
It's a very smart way of playing with those feelings that everyone has in terms of the heartbreak of being rejected, basically.
All the characters in the film have their own struggles, and they all have their own sadness, and they all have their own secrets.
How dare you say that about a man of the cloth?
Well, you started it.
I'm not forgiving you any of these things until the next time, so I'm not.
Well, I better not be dying in the meantime then, eh, Father? I'll be pure fucked.
You will be pure fucked. Yes, you will be pure fucked.
I wanted to get Colin and Brendan back together ever since In Bruges, really. It was definitely written for them. I think people really love them as a pairing, as I do, and I kind of wanted to explore getting them back together in a very different story.
Pádraic lives with his sister. He's a happy lad, as long as the animals are fed, and his friend Colin is there to join him for a few pints and a bit of a chat every day at 2 o'clock. As long as that's all happening, then life is just grand.
Colin was perfect for the role of Pádraic because he still seems kind of boyish in the way he acts and the way his facial expressions are, and his eyes are very expressive.
What the hell are you heading off to?
And I think Pádraic needed a boyish quality to him for the comedy to work.
Everyone to a man knows Mozart's name.
Well, I don't, so there goes that theory.
I have great admiration for Colin in every way possible. I love him as a human being, and I just think his instincts and his integrity are brilliant. Just count him as a very dear friend. Colin is a guy who's been on the island pretty much all his life. He's an interested character. He's curious. His house is filled with all sorts of bizarre puppets from various parts of the world and lots of musical instruments.
Brendan has a way to him even when he just walks into a room, and I feel like that was Colin. There's a feeling that Colin on the island is like sort of revered, and I think that's the case with Brendan in general, the feeling of like you have respect for him.
All the ladies love Colin, you know, always did.
Yeah, that's not true. The pendulum swings wide with Brendan, from the tenderness that he's capable of to the godlike wrath as well that he can exude if needs be. It's all there.
Why can't you just leave me alone?
Colin and Brendan, they're also great comedians. They don't play it as funny. They just play the truth of it, and we find it funny.
What are you doing?
I don't know.
For fuck's sake, like.
That allows you to nail, I think, the comedy, but also get to the sadness of the piece.
Stand.
And they definitely didn't want to shy away from any of those sadder or trickier points.
I did think the two of ye always made a funny pairing, like.
No, we didn't. One of the characters, he says the two of you always made kind of a strange pairing, an odd couple kind of thing, and Pádraic is aghast at that.
Colin was always more of a thinker. Huh? You're more one of life's good guys.
I used to think that'd be a nice thing to be. One of life's good guys.
It's kind of interesting to see who an audience identifies with.
But we're going from the top, yeah? Yeah.
Go back more, keep the horror, simple version of the horror.
Okay, okay.
Cool. Siobhan, played by Kerry Condon, is Páric's younger sister.
Siobhan's kind of like been through a lot, and there's a sadness to her, and there's like a loneliness to her, and she's stuck.
My God, like, did she bring anger and frustration and clarity and kindness and so many different things to the role. It's about one boring man leaving another man alone, that's all.
One boring man, you're all feckin' boring. With your piddling grievances over nothing, you're all feckin' boring.
Dominic, played by Keoghan, is a fun character. He's sort of happy-go-lucky like Pádraic.
Dominic is the son of the local policeman, a bit like the Shakespearean fool or the court jester. He's quite a tragic character in some ways.
He has a pretty bad life with him and his father. He hasn't got his mother around, but he doesn't show what's going on, basically.
What the hell was he hitting you with?
A kettle was the final thing. I wouldn't have minded, but for the spout. He's always injecting some sort of energy and a different angle to Colin's character.
There's an integrity to him and a darkness, but something that's very cinematic about Barry that I wanted to explore. And Barry plays it beautifully and heartbreakingly and comedically.
You're behaving awful unusual.
It's just brilliant actors everywhere, just an incredible ensemble of actors doing amazing work everywhere. And just trying to keep up with everyone, really, to be honest with you. I mean, just amazing stuff going on left, right and centre.
We're rolling.
There's a lovely little donkey in this story called Jenny.
He has a little miniature donkey. She's very important to him. She's his friend.
Him and his little donkey.
What about me, little donkey?
And we got a beautiful miniature donkey to play Jenny, who was called Jenny in real life.
No, Jenny! Out!
She just wants a bit of company, Siobhan.
Animals is for outside, I've told you.
It's a proper pet, that donkey.
Martin wrote this script, and you're just going, oh, fucking were you smoking when you wrote that? Because it's impossible. And then lo and behold, the animals just did the most beautiful things.
Good girl, well done.
It's been amazing, really. Jenny was the top of the scene stealer.
The best donkey for the job.
And this way.
What made me want to do it was that the project came to me from Martin McDonagh straight. That's the entire truth.
Not the first person to say this, he's an extraordinary writer. It's really quite common knowledge. Anyone who knows of his work, people in the industry, lovers of theatre, critics of theatre and film, he's recognised as one of the most extraordinary voices in theatre and in cinema now.
It's hard to find scripts that are moving and make people think about how they think, and he always seems to do that.
You can't just all of a sudden stop being friends with a fella.
Why can't I?
And isn't that the purpose of art? You want art to make people think deeper.
What's the fucking matter then?
He's dull, Siobhan.
What, he's what?
He's dull.
Martin's writing is like a piece of music. It's the construction of the sentences, you know, and the dialogue and the characters that he's drawn.
The benefit of having him as writer-director is he's very sure of everything, and he's extremely specific with the notes.
What Martin does is he writes with that latitude inbuilt, so that he'll write the characters where there is room to explore and to find things out within the process.
Reset.
Yeah, resetting.
I really wanted it not to be in a specific place, so hence a made-up island. So I wanted it to be something a little more mythical. So we explored each of the Aran Islands, and actually Inishmore, the largest of the three, ticked most of the boxes. So we shot there for 3 weeks.
So we decided on Inishmore quite early on. In the script, the laneways feature very prominently, and the small fields and the stone walls. And when you go looking for it, it's actually pretty unique to the Aran Islands, and we found some really good spots.
But we also needed a beach and some places a bit more mountainous for certain scenes, so we found those on Achill Island in County Mayo.
If you can see the house behind us, we're on Ken Beach. So that's the location for Colin's house, Brendan Gleeson's character.
Achill is really quite majestic and beautiful, and that's sort of what we wanted to capture in the film, was the beauty of Ireland and the cinema of it. We found a beautiful coast road to build the pub.
There's a beautiful road in Achill, the Atlantic Road. It's right on the coast. It's between the cliffs at Ashleam and back to a place called Clockmore. There's no modernity there, no houses, no telegraph poles. So we drove that road several times, looking at the best vantage points and where you got the best views.
We didn't go looking for a pub. We went looking for the most beautiful spot to build a pub, and that worked out on Achill.
We sort of stood out there and wondered whether we were brave enough to build a pub here, because it's literally on the sea and it's massively open to the elements. And then we decided to go for it. So we built our pub from scratch. We sat on the bench and thought, yeah, that's the view we'd like from our front door. So we orientated our pub door to look down the coastline along the wild Atlantic Way.
The places that we have been lucky enough to inhabit for this short time we've spent together have really held the story together, and have held our dreams and our disappointments and our fears and our need to allow the story breadth and vastness for this ultimately really intimate kind of passion play.
Martin McDonagh and I have done 3 or 4 films before. I think we do have similar sensibilities. He never has to tell me why something's supposed to be funny or sad, so he can trust that I'm seeing the same film the same way that he is. That helps, right, everyone? Typically, I don't actually start writing music for the film until there is some sort of an edit of the film so that I can see what it looks like. Martin had already, for one section of the film, he had this piece he'd put in that's performed by a gamelan, this Balinese ensemble, mostly metallic instruments. And I happen to be a big fan of Balinese gamelan music, but it's also obviously a bit strange to have that in your the movie taking place in Inisherin. So I started playing with metallic instruments, in particular celeste, which is a keyboard that plays bell sounds, and just started going off in that direction of making it more like a fairy tale.
That's my favorite bit.
The music seems simple at first, but it's actually not quite so simple, and the story, or Pádraic's life seems simple at first, and then, gets much less so.
I like films that you can watch repeatedly. I feel it should be like going back to a novel. Whatever ending you're offered up, I think, should be perfect in its own sense, even if it leaves you with a lot of questions. I think those questions are as interesting as being spoon-fed an ending.
Does this make things clearer to you?
Not really, no. Pain begets pain, anger begets anger, violence begets violence. If you don't have a space within which you can figure out how you're feeling about the shite that life will ultimately impose upon you, well then that's no good for you, but it's also no good for the rest of the world.
I always love going to a movie and coming back and having a proper Barney afterwards about the significance of it and at what point did you lose and gain sympathy. And again, coming back to Martin's writing, it's the ability to be able to mix and match all that stuff. You don't get a hero and a villain. We're all heroes and villains.
I think there are twists and turns in the story that I hope an audience won't see coming, and I usually like that kind of thing too.
But there are no banshees on Inisherin.
I know, I just like the double SH sounds. Let's just call it quits.
We won't call it quits. We'll call it the start.